Hello again. I'm Karen Sims with the Do, Be, and Live Better podcast. I'm so happy you joined in and tuned in today, and I am hoping we can continue our conversation about how to help you have a more resilient, resourceful, and abundant life. And I'm doing all of these conversations through a trauma and sort of science based, neuroscience based lens as best as we understand the neuroscience, but where I can connect the dots, I'm going to do that. And the other thing that I'm constantly committed to trying to do is also making sure that I continue to sort of break down concepts and where I can make plain or plainer some of the common healing practices or resiliency practices or better practices. If I can translate those so that you can see how all the threads connect together, I am going to do that. I also thought I would be a little bit I wanted to spend just a couple of seconds sort of telling you what the next couple of conversations will be like. So I will continue our dialogue about resiliency until the end of the month, so until the end of April. And then in May, because it is Children's Mental Health Awareness Month, I'm going to pretty much spend the whole month talking about trauma and its impact on you, how you parent, how your children exist, and strategies that might help you in more of the caregiving relational mode. And I might even throw in something around helping you if you are a coach, a therapist, a provider working with children, what you might want to add in your environments, in your programs, and your strategies. So look ahead as we move forward in this journey together. I'm going to do something today that may sound like a step back because we've been unpacking the science of resiliency. And I have covered what resiliency is and is not, really asking you to think about resiliency being this combination of things that you are. So, your internal structures, how you're made, sort of your internal DNA, your compass, what you've acquired in the world, like how you were uniquely you, and how the world interacts with you and how the world interacts with you and meets those needs. So it's this bi-directional piece. And we know that if you have a better, you have a internal locus of control, so you are someone who was sort of formed and believed that life is what you make it. If you if you are somebody who was more easier, your personality was more easier going, more laissez-faire, who could kind of roll with the punches. Maybe you just, and this is not, I want to say this clearly, this is not a bad or good or better or not. It's just sort of what we know makes it easier to sort of bounce back through adversity because they're gifts and benefits. However, you're structured and wired, hear that well. They're gifts and benefits. We need a big tent with lots of different social and emotional diversity. We need it all. So this isn't a pro and con. I just want to make sure you hear that. But individuals who are more easygoing and laissez-faire, it's sort of easier for parents to parent them. It's easier for them to get some of those early developmental needs met. And so they might have a few more tools in the toolbox just because they were easier. Uh, and if you grew up in an environment where even if your parents couldn't be fully emotionally available to you or physically available to you for a variety of different reasons, again, no blame, no shame, none of that here. But imagine you just couldn't get what you wanted and needed if you had one other trusting adult, a grandparent, a coach, a minister, a neighbor who you felt poor, a teacher who saw you, who saw your potential. If you believed, you had somebody who validated your becoming and belonging, that would be a protective factor. And if you knew, even if they weren't perfect at demonstrating it, but if you knew internally that you felt loved, if you had opportunities to be seen and heard and celebrated, so you had opportunities to build competence, to have self efficacy, to believe that you can make a difference in your life and not always feel hopeless and helpless and powerless, those are some things. And we know you need, so those are all the internal things and some external things. And we know that you need the opportunities to move your body, and you need positive social networks, people in your life that are good, and you need a sense of community, and you need the opportunity to take safe calculated risk and be seen and heard. You need people who pour into your dream and validate your lived experience. You need the ability to stay emotionally regulated, and I have a whole good session if you want to go back. I think it's module or episode 3 that you can go back and pick that up, and it's around kind of real practicing some emotional regulation skills. I can always add more. Please continue to send me your feedback. But all of those things are connected to the science of resiliency. A lot. Not simple, because human beings aren't simple. Bi-directional, meaning that it's sort of what you put in, what you receive. It's this cycle of life. And I said I'm going to probably do something that feels like a little setback, just because I don't know if you've ever had a couple of those weeks or cycles where you've had many conversations that have piqued your heart or mind or spirit, and there's been like their residue sort of left, and you think, gosh, I should share this with other people. So, part of the residue that I'd like to share that is so connected to resiliency is something that I don't think we talk about a lot. I know there are thousands of YouTube videos and podcasts and talks and so many resources. So I'm sure it's out there. But I haven't heard people say this. And it's sort of linked to a lot of both our spiritual practices, and for folks who believe in or who think about sort of metaphysical practices like the law of attraction and all of that. There are some mindset shifts that people reference and mention that seem like, again, if you are a part of a traditional faith-based orientation where you're taught to keep your mind on faith or believing, or keep believing that sometimes, right, there's all things work, all things can work together for good, and there is a trusting in the rhythm of life, and that being in the flow of life, that life constantly is expressing itself and teaching you and wanting to heal you, right? That there is a divine order. And again, that shows up in so many of our spiritual, social, and practices. That's a theme that I thought that for me, and I'm not sure for you, but in my journey over the last couple of weeks, one of the things that I've sort of connected to is the why it might be so hard to get into the flow of believing that there is a quote unquote method to the madness. I don't believe that all things are good. So that's my belief. You could have and hold another belief. So everything isn't good. However, there might be a flow of life. I think our brains and hearts and spirits want us to be our best, full, divine self. So life is constantly creative. I think about the nature, and we're in a season of growth and spring and possibility. So, right, if you just watch plants grow, life constantly wants to express itself, and it needs the right fertilizer and sun and environment to do that, but will constantly commit itself to moving aligning itself for our good. Can't say enough. I want to say this clearly. Not everything is good, but there is a force or forces that are driving us towards our good, even in the face of adversity and storms. And I think having a sense of hope, having a belief that things can get better is such an essential first step towards resilience and healing. So take that in. So why might I be saying that? And why might I believe that? Believing that it can be better, believing that it can be good for you is the most important thing in this journey towards resilience and healing. I know I've shared a couple of different times that our brains want to heal themselves, but they also can develop something called a negativity bias. And when life can be hard, or you've experienced hard things that you perceive as hard or different, or it feels like life is constantly lifing, to quote the young folks, I'm not young anymore, but when it feels like life keeps lifing, it is sometimes easier. And it feels like, especially if you reach a cycle in your life where you feel like life has been lifing for 10, 15, 20 years, like, whoo. And sometimes you get into this space where you feel like everything will be work, everything will be hard, or that although it can be good for other people, just the things that you've been through and experienced just can't be good for you. Why I know what, not why, what I know about that cycle is when you get there, you're constantly either looking backwards, where you're constantly reflecting on what has been or what hasn't been, or the losses, or the grief, or the mistakes, or the pain, or the assaults, right? You can constantly have a backward lens. And I know that, right? Because again, I said the brain wants to keep you safe. And so it's like, hey, remember that bad things have happened, and do everything that you can to be sure that you remember those bad things so that you don't end up in that bad place. So it's sort of like this weight where you're constantly off of balance, constantly moving away from your future. Conversely, there are folks who spend most of their time, talent, and energy looking forward. So they are always planning and focusing on, and this is not a Karen, I just have loved this. I heard a minister say this, but they're always focusing on the one day win. And he suggested that we should focus on the 1 day wins, WINS, not the WHENS, the wins. But some folks get super focused on the future, and they're never in the present. They're always sort of thinking about, well, when this happens, I'll find peace. When I reach this milestone, when this gets in place, when that gets in place, when I get this, some of our wellness plans are completely out of balance because we see wellness as like a series of destinations. So I'm going to focus on money for the next 6 months. And then after money is coming together, then I'm going to focus on my relationship. And then I'll focus on, and then you turn around and your life is way out of whack because you were so focused on the future that the present you're not there. And the other piece about not being in the present means is that your brain is constantly aware of your need or your feeling of lack or your feeling like you aren't where you want to be, right? So, one, I'm focusing on the past, and my brain says keep yourself safe from any potential hurt, right? So you're always looking backward. The other way is I am always looking forward. So I am not present in the moment. I am always in anticipation, and I'm always in a spirit of lack and incompletion. And notice leaning forward and leaning backward and forward. None of those places are movement from a centered and grounding and present focus space. When you think about resiliency being this scale, right, where life is sort of on a fulcrum, right? And we're trying to make sure that there's a balance. Actually, more good stuff is going on than the bad things that you might have experienced. I should move this under my eyes, right? If life, so, right, life is the scale, and we want to make sure that the good stuff outweighs the negative stuff. We want to do that. If you are unbalanced because you're always here or here, the benefit, the good stuff can't catch on, can't gain the traction, can't move, can't serve as a support because you're not grounded and centered. So imagine, just for imagine, thinking about having some daily practices that help you be present focused, some physical practices, some mindset shifts, some spiritual practices that help you acknowledge the here and now, to make peace with the here and now, to acknowledge the here and now. I'll do a whole thing, or maybe just link to some great resources, because there's so many out there around how to authentically do gratitude. But I will say one of the reasons why gratitude is such a useful practice to help us be in the here and now is it helps you identify and recognize and celebrate those one day wins. Every single day, there is a WINS about what you do, about what you're learning, even if it feels like you're in a cycle of stuckness. I can imagine that even through that cycle, there are times where you get new insight, new tools, new reflections, new seeing, right? And each time that happens, if you acknowledge it and not just focus on the stuckness, your brain will continue to acknowledge the difference and incentivize you to keep going, which helps you be and feel more resilient. So I know every time we meet, I typically throw in an activity, and I would be remiss if I didn't tell you what I was thinking for today's conversation. I would love it if you could think about one of the things, and I promise I'm not gonna have us go excavating or digging up too much, but if you notice that there is a pattern or patterns in your life, let's choose something easy and not too complicated, but maybe you notice that regularly at work, you find yourself in situations where, on more days than not, maybe you feel unrecognized, or maybe you feel like in your home, people keep asking you to be the giver, and it feels like there's little reciprocity or little acknowledgement. Or maybe you do have a legitimate experience where lots of bad things that happen, and you just start to believe and feel like you look for the bad things. And so you're organized in a way. Okay, I said nothing super big. That's a big one. So ignore that one. Let's choose a little one. But just again, think about a little pattern. Okay, here's a fun one. You have decided and committed that you maybe want to work out regularly, or maybe you want to find a new dating partner, or maybe you've decided you want to eat and cook differently, right? Choose the low hanging fruit. Those are all still big, but choose something, I don't know, that's more tangible, more juicy. And to think about, so like put the thing down, and this is always good to do in a notebook, and to think about what tends to happen when maybe you've decided to change your diet or change your behavior or try something new. What's that pattern? Is it that you typically get started and then find yourself going for 6 weeks and then get distracted? Do you find yourself constantly putting off the start? You are tempted to get going, and then you're like, well, I'll start the diet on the 1st. I'll start the diet on the 15th. I'll start the diet after a holiday. I'll start the diet. Or maybe it's that I'm going to meet new friends, and you're like, okay, I'm going to join Bubble BFF, or I'm going to do everything. But then I find myself getting so busy and distracted that I'm not looking, or I'm going to go to a talk, or I'm going to be more, whatever it is. Think about what it is. Think about what tends to be your pattern. And maybe again, don't overthink it. Just the first 5 or 6 things that come to your mind. But what tends to get in the way? And really you want to externalize it, because you have an internal script around like what it is, why you again can't lose weight, why you can't find a partner, whatever it is, or why your marriage isn't good, or why you don't have difficult conversations, or why you don't have the friends that you want, or save the money. There's a story. So not we don't have to go into the essay, but just the greatest hits, like what's the pattern? And then I want you to think about one small step, not the finish line, but one thing that you could do every single day or most days that would be moving more intentionally in that direction. So, for example, if you are someone who, I'm going to choose the food, you decided that you want to cook more and eat differently. Sometimes I hear people coming up with these elaborate plans. They're going to meal prep on Sunday, and that's going to last the whole week. And then they're going to blah, blah, blah. And they're going to package lunch, and they're going to blah, 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 blah. And there's like 30 steps. And then they're overwhelmed. And then all they keep remembering is all the times that they've started the process and not been able to sustain it. And woo. So imagine, however, that if you decided to unpack all of the 30 steps and say that what I'm going to do is to make sure that there are snacky vegetables in my refrigerator, and I'm going to make sure that they are at home. So when I come home after work, I can grab a healthy snack. Something simple. Maybe you want to have them at the refrigerator at work, or maybe you're going to grab some protein bars. Just one small thing. So you're going to replace, while other people are doing the midday slump vending machine run, you're going to have a small, healthy Ziploc bag of snacks that feel good to you, that are healthy, that are aligned with your mission and vision. Again, something in the fridge for when you come home, something in your purse that you can have when everybody's doing the midday run, something in the morning, just one small thing. And then when you do the one small thing, it's helpful to do this on a calendar. The days that you do the thing that you said, that you grab the carrots in the refrigerator when you come home from work, or rather than something else that might be less healthy, or that you prepare to have the snacks, you know, you recognize your wins. And every day you find a way to recognize your wins and you thank yourself for your accomplishments and you celebrate how you do it. And rather than focus on, so if you said you were going to do it 5 days, if 4 days or 3.5 days, if you had the carrots but still snuck in the candy bar, I don't want you to focus on the candy bar. I want you to celebrate the carrots and go, you go, girl, you did the carrots for 3 days. Like, look at you. And you even had them on the days that you had the candy bar. Yay, right? And the more you build your practice, those baby steps of progress where you realize you can do it and you recognize your wins and you think about those um, steps that you do and you recognize how, with intention and structure and purpose, you can get momentum to continue to move forward. The way that most people move, sort of take those goals is, again, they focus on this big long-term destination. The little steps along the way, they lose sight of. And often their brains either take them back and they're only remembering what didn't work, or forward, they're so focused on some major future destination that they're never in present. And I would invite you to think about one small step or multiple small steps that you recognize, you celebrate, and who cares if it takes a year for you to develop mastery. It is about like life sort of moving with purpose, wanting you to win. And as you move towards any destination, those skills, whatever you're doing, can be generalized. So the skills that it takes you to be really successful with your diet or your nutrition, I hate the word diet, but nutrition, to eat better so that you can feel better, are the same tools and skills that could help you in business. They could help you in your relationships with friends or your partner. Being able to have a little delayed gratification, to celebrate your successes and acknowledge your strengths, successes. Look at your strengths, build upon your strengths, trust your competency, feel your sense of agency and self-efficacy. All of those things are universal protective factors that are essential for your growth. All right. Hopefully that feels. If there are questions about any of this, please, 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 please send them to me because I can continue to break them down or connect you to other resources that I think might have explained this differently or might just enhance your process. So, the last thing that I want to offer, if you look at the title of this session or this episode, I call it the Serenity Prayer, or as a step towards resiliency. So I want to read that and then I want to help connect the threads and see if you follow my flow, like to make sure that there's a method to my madness. So it's back on glasses. I'm going to read both the short version of the Serenity Prayer and the long version. The longer one, I think, is more appropriate for what I want you to be thinking about. But the short one also can be a brain strategy. So here we go. The short version. God, or higher power, whatever works for you, grant me the serenity to accept the things that I cannot change, courage to change the things that I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. So, the longer version, is God, grant me the serenity to accept the things that I cannot change, courage to change the things that I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. Living one day at a time, enjoying one moment at a time, accepting hardship as a pathway to peace, taking, as he did, this sinful world as it is, not as I would like it to be. Trusting, sorry, trusting that all things will be made right if I surrender to God's will, that I may be reasonably happy in this world. And I know, and supremely happy in the next. Now, I know not everyone has a faith based orientation. And so there are ways to see this, not from sort of a classical, traditional Christian lens. So I hope you can hear that you can believe that the universe or your higher power or life really wants you to have peace, and that by accepting and being present focused and having courage to really be happy with where you are in every moment that you're here, and really recognizing those things will help you live one day at a time, enjoy moment by moment, having acceptance that sometimes there will be hiccups and heartbreaks, and that is all a part of the human experience. But that the more you accept your own hiccups and heartbreaks, the more you can accept others' hiccups and heartbreaks, so that you're not constantly not living in a spirit of unforgiveness or lack or envy or jealousy or disappointment or angry. You instead can just be letting people be who they need to be, letting, accepting that there is this ebb and flow of life, and really trusting that everything, especially life, wants you to be whole and healed and well. And even if it feels like in your spirit that there is no evidence, I know this feels sometimes like a little inauthentic, but if you can again lean into the serenity prayer or something like it and believe that good can happen for you and has happened for you and is constantly unfolding for you, it will make such a difference in how you feel and be resilient. Hopefully, this was a little, I know, a little step forward. I wanted to unpack things. If your mindset around your capacity for life being good and unfolding, and I hear the helicopter. Sorry about that. But if 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 this piece doesn't happen, you can have all of the great practices that we've been talking about. You can build the networks, you can have social connections, you can, we're going to talk about movement next time. You can do all of the right things. But if you can't recognize your wins, can't believe that it can be good for you, you won't be able to internalize it, or it'll be really challenging to internalize to sort of be able to apply this. So practice the serenity prayer. Your life is unfolding for its good. Good things can happen to and for you and are happening. to and for you. Until next time, do be and live better. And I look forward to seeing you again next week. Bye bye.